All right, guys. So this right here is definitely an underreported story because this is serious as a heart attack, and we all know what the actual purpose of this move is. So CNN says the following: Hegseth orders Pentagon to cut number of senior generals by 20%. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has ordered senior Pentagon leadership to cut the number of four-star generals and admirals by at least 20% across the military, according to a memo signed by Hegseth, dated Monday and obtained by CNN. As of 2023, there were 37 four-star generals and admirals across the entire military. The memo also directs the Pentagon to cut the number of general officers in the National Guard by 20% and cut the total number of general and flag officers across the military by 10%. There are currently about 900 general and flag officers, those with the rank of 1 star or higher across the military. In his memo, Hegseth wrote that the cuts are a critical step toward removing redundant force structure to optimize and streamline leadership by reducing excess generals and flag officer positions. Now, again, stop and think about this. They're doing a 13% increase in military spending. We have the first over $1 trillion military budget. At the same time, by the way, the Pentagon failed 7 audits in a row and can't account for 63% of their funds. But at the same time, you're taking senior leadership and axing a very large percentage of them. That's curious. I wonder why. So they continue here. Senator Jack Reed, the top Democrat on the Senate Armed Services Committee, questioned Hegseth's rationale for the cuts and warned dismissing top officers without sound justification could cripple the military. Quote, I have always advocated for efficiency at the Department of Defense, but tough personnel decisions should be based on facts and analysis, not arbitrary percentages. Eliminating the positions of many of our most skilled and experienced officers without sound justification would not create efficiency in the military. It could cripple it, Reed said in his statement Monday. Secretary Hegseth has shown an eagerness to dismiss military leaders without cause, and I will be skeptical of the rationale for these plans until he explains them before the Armed Services Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you right now. Take a wild guess as to why Pete Hegseth is doing this. And by the way, let's be clear, Pete Hegseth is not in any way, shape, or form acting free of his own volition. He did not make the decision here. The decision came from higher up. Who's higher up? Donald J. Trump. Why are they doing this? You know, we have a lot of generals in this country. 900 general and flag officers with ranked 1 star or higher. This is a purge, an ideological purge. They have been determining, hey, who is a loyalist sycophant to MAGA that will never question our dear leader, and who isn't? They've been making those determinations behind the scenes. They've been digging and trying to figure out. And then now they're realizing, okay, we know the ones who might stand up and say, like Milley did, like Mark Milley did, that's unconstitutional. We're not doing that. I swore an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States, and the president is violating the Constitution. We're not doing that. This is what happened when Trump tried to invoke the Insurrection Act during the George Floyd protests and riots. He wanted to send the U.S. military into our own streets, and he also wanted to shoot protesters in the leg. And General Milley had to come out and say that we don't do that. The U.S. military is not deployed in our own streets. That's not what we're for. We don't do that in this country. And so now they don't want anybody to push back. They don't want anybody to say no. They don't want anybody to represent the position of the Constitution. By the way, Trump just said the other day when asked, hey, are you obligated to follow the Constitution? He said, I don't know. Hey, does everybody in this country get due process? He says, I don't know. So the whole idea here is they've determined who they think won't play ball, who they think won't bend the knee fully, and they're trying to purge every single one of them. By the way, now we know more as to why, when April 20th came, they did not invoke the Insurrection Act and declare martial law over the border. All of the evidence was indicating that's what they're going to do. There was a tremendous amount of evidence saying that was the plan. Trump signed an executive order on day one and said in 90 days, Hegseth and Noam are going to tell me whether or not to invoke the Insurrection Act over the border. So we were supposed to get an answer on April 20th. April 20th came and went, and they released a statement and said, we're not invoking the Insurrection Act yet. And one of the reasons for it is Hegseth is massively fucking incompetent, as everybody knows, so we can't organize something that big. But also, they realized at the time that even though they had already purged some high-level military officials, they're like, we didn't purge enough, and some of these people are going to blow the whistle. Some of these people are going to call out our crimes. Some of these people are going to recognize our illegality and do something to try to stop it. And so now, that's why at the same time, military spending is going to hit a record high, 13% increase, $1.1 trillion military budget. At the same time, they're going, oh, let's make sure we cut the number of generals by 20%. Because it's about 20% of them that we realize are not going to bend the knee. They're not going to play ball. They're going to stand up for the Constitution. They're going to push back when they believe they're in the right. And here we are. And again, for the life of me, this is one of the things that drives me crazy in the Trump era is, like, he breaks the outrage meter so often, and there's so many scandals that oftentimes some of the bigger scandals fly under the radar. And that's what we're dealing with here. There is no doubt that what I just described is accurate. There is no doubt they are purging the military of anybody and everybody who would speak out against them. And this is, it's discussed in such like a fucking clinical way in the CNN article, you know? It's discussed like, oh, it's just a high-level personnel decision that's being made in order to make the military more efficient. If you were making it more efficient, you would cut that bitch by at least 50%. Because like I said, they can't account for over 60% of their money, and they failed 7 audits in a row. And you want to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. There's never been a place with more waste, fraud, and abuse than the U.S. military. So that's clearly not what they're doing. What they're doing has to be something else. And that something else is, let's purge anybody and everybody who might be a problem. They might be a problem. And so, guys, they are trying to guarantee their iron grip on power, and they're moving at a rapid pace. This is the thing that's so frustrating, right? Is to be fair to the judicial branch, they have done their job. The courts have stood up. They have said the right thing in nearly every single case. But at the same time, you are always playing catch up because they're moving at 1,000 miles an hour and you're going 7 miles an hour trying to keep up. And also, they have no enforcement mechanism. And so here we are. Record military budget, but we're firing 20% of the generals. Gee, I wonder why. That's a real tough one to figure out. Not quite sure why they're firing so many generals and they're doing it in such a haphazard way and lying about it as they go. It's so crazy to think about the fact that as bad as Trump's first term was, that was nothing compared to how bad the second one was going to be. Right? We look back now and you see the Mark Milleys of the world, the Steve Mnuchins, the Gary Cohns. These are all people who it was a tremendous lift to just make it so that Trump was a very bad president instead of an historically bad president. It was a massive lift. But here we are, and now he's surrounded by his gaggle of idiots and clowns and frauds and charlatans and war criminals, and it's getting worse day by day by day. And so literally what we're relying on now is the saving grace of their immense incompetence, right? That's what we're relying on because they're following through with all these purges. They're giving Trump his iron grip on power. Project 2025, Schedule F, unitary executive theory. The idea is no more civil servants, make them all Trump cucks. They're doing all of that. But if we get out of this mess, the reason we get out of this mess is because they are so massively incompetent that they can't do fucking anything right. And so when Trump delivers some massively unconstitutional order, they'll probably fuck it up in 17 ways so they can't actually carry it out correctly. We're in a bad place when that's like what we're hoping for, when that's what the wish is. Like, hey, I hope they just fuck up this horrible thing that they're trying to do and they can't complete it. But that truly is where we are. So, more people need to be talking about this. This clearly is exactly what it appears to be. You know, when you have a president of the United States going out there on a regular basis, threatening to steal Panama, threatening to steal Greenland, tried to coup Venezuela last time, going to try to do it again this time, bombing Yemen, bombing Somalia, saying we're going to take over Gaza, threatening war with Iran, threatening war with Mexico. When you have a president in that scenario, yes, if you have hundreds of these high-level military officials, some of them are going to speak up and say, I don't think that's right, sir. Right? And what they're trying to do is make sure that literally everybody, you've seen the meetings, y'all. You've seen the meetings where Trump has his cabinet around him. It's fucking terrifying. You see everybody's got a MAGA hat in front of them. All the men are wearing the red tie to try to look exactly like Trump. They all have to start their statements by sucking him off relentlessly. Sir, you've been the best president we've ever seen in such a short time frame, sir. You're incredible. You're great. I don't know if anybody's ever been as good as you, bro. Bro, your dick is so big. It's so big, bro. You're like the most manly man ever. You're basically like, you should probably be president forever. Before they get into saying anything of substance, they have to do all that. And by the way, even when they get into the substance, they just lie, right? So just like how that cabinet meeting looks, they're trying to make it so the military also looks like that. And there are no high-level, intelligent, nuanced decision makers who care about the law. That it's literally all people who are just like, yeehaw, let's go bomb more countries and worship Trump. It's bad, bro. It's really bad. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.